Hey everyone, I know it's towards the end of the event, so I'll try to keep it brief, interactive, and also useful, hopefully. So I wanted to actually first start off with just talking about general how teams can become like more data driven, or how you can think about your users. But I thought I'll also add like few case studies to add like more specific examples to potentially engage you guys. So let me first set the agenda. So I just wanted to highlight like what are the typical challenges that data teams face, and probably you're aware of some of those, but I'll try to highlight some of those again. Second, like what are some of the ways where you could monitor the data and like how to approach data analytics. Few case studies, and specifically I wanted to go a little deeper into in-app ratings, which is like slightly interesting, and you probably you as a user might have given ratings at some point, so hopefully this will be engaging for you. So I just wanted to start with like what are the common challenges that data analytics teams face. The first one is like, again, these are like seem obvious, but like, I mean, if you start like thinking about this, like so many nuances here. Like the first one, clear definition of KPIs. Like it seems very basic, but like everyone gets it wrong. I don't know if you've been following the whole Elon Musk Twitter drama. What is daily active user? What is monthly active user? Even in the product that I manage, it's sometimes very hard. Like how do you define who's a daily active user? Like think about it. Like let's say you get a push notification on your app, you open the app and you just like immediately shut it down. Would you be actually counted as a daily active user? Should you be counted as a monthly active user? Like should that be counted as a session, and should that be indicative as part of like a calculation for like what is an average session length a user takes? There are so many nuances to something as simple as like a daily active user or a monthly active user. So I think it's like definitely complicated. People like Elon Musk, Twitter, they also have disagreements, and so will your teams as well. So I think first thing is to really nail down like what is the objective of your product, like what are the clear KPIs that you want to like set yourself up for. The next one is like once you have this defined, like actually setting targets for it. This is again another pain point where sometimes it's a problem if you like overshoot or try to set like too aggressive targets which are unachievable, or if you're not setting up like high targets. And the other problem is a lot of teams themselves, or product managers or product leaders, they feel that they're not in control of the product. Sometimes there's so many external influencing factors, macroeconomic, microeconomic, like company specific, team specific. So it's really hard sometimes to set targets, and a lot of times like people are just reluctant and say, hey listen, I can't set these targets because first of all I don't even have like basic benchmarks about like competitors, about like my own product, historical targets, and also I don't want to sign up for something where I can't accomplish. So again, very obvious, but like when you actually get down to it, like it's super tricky to set targets. Real-time monitoring, we've seen oftentimes and most times like at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, you start like analyzing what went wrong. It's never like at the moment like what is happening, how to fix it. So obvious, but like again, like a lot of companies, even the more advanced companies also like do this like after the fact. Some of the other like more data management related stuff, like so many different sources. How do you actually identify single source of truth? Like again, this is like super tricky. I've seen like anytime I want to try to get insights on something, at least like three other people are telling me like different types of like information and different sources of truth. So I think very critical to nail down like what is the single source of truth, who can you trust. And lastly, there's so many ad hoc requests and there's no streamlining of process. So typically I just wanted to lay out that these are the main problems that data analytics team face. So here's like an example, like, imagine a product leader saying, I want an insight on how is engagement helping with retention. A very basic question. A lot of times we create features to drive engagement, we engage the users, but is it really helping with retention? So this is a very basic question, but if I were to answer it, I have to first, let's say, reach out to a BI team. They'll give me a report. There are obviously errors in that. I have to go back to them again. I have to try to look at churn data versus usage data. I try to match them, but let's say sometimes the customer ID is not matching, or there is a hashed version of customer ID and so on. So you get the idea. I mean, you must have seen this as well. And 2 months later, everyone is clueless about, are we actually getting the right information, and there's no trust in it. Ideal scenario, you have all the data available at the fingertips, and in 2 hours you can actually do something like this, where you can easily say, hey, you know what, we have seen that higher engagement users tend to actually retain with the product by, let's say, exceeds by 10% compared to someone who's not engaged at all. So this is the ideal state we all aspire to get to, but there's so many hurdles to get here. So some of the things, again, I have done in my product is one, figured out first thing is, do you have access to all the data sources? There's so many different data sources. The first step is, do you have access to all the data? Are you collecting the right data? A lot of times I've seen, every time I try to think about my product, I realized that, oh, we should be actually collecting more data, which will only help me bring better insights. So you don't have access to data. Sometimes you're not even collecting the data. Not it's intuitive that you have to collect more data, but I think it's really key to identify when you're collecting this data, where you're collecting, and how you're collecting. And once you have this data, there are always quality issues. So how do you monitor the quality of data? How do you clean the data as well? So you have to ensure you set up all the automated processes. And these are some of the ways that I was able to try to automate some of these things. There's so many data monitoring tools available. You can look at what is the setup cost, what is the maintenance, compliance, and costs, etc. And then you can see which is the best tool for you to automate some of this. You can define clear rules and understand what deviations you want to capture. And lastly, you also want to see how to set up automated systems, maybe let's say email alerts and so on. So these are some of the things I was able to do, and we got to a pretty good place because of these. And apart from setting up automation, as I said, you should think about access controls if you're working out of sensitive data, especially in healthcare and few other industries. Generate auto emails so that no one wants to go to dashboards, I feel. So maybe if it's emails, people will pay more attention. Also actively comparing actuals versus targets, or looking at advanced analytics. So these are some of the other things that you can do. So now I wanted to cover, as I said, few case studies that we've tried in our team, and they were pretty insightful. So just highlighting some of those basics before I deep dive into one such case study. So first one, very obvious, I would say that we were able to do automatic anomaly detection of churn, basically. So this chart you see is a churn chart, and you can see there are other benchmarks you can establish, either historical months or competitor products or some other product in your own firm, and you can actually do this simple analysis. You can set up these automated systems, and anytime there's a huge spike in churn, you can trigger email alerts to everyone in the team, and this can be more real time versus after the fact, after a month or quarter, you realize, oh, on this particular day there was a spike. Do we know why? Another example, again related to churn. Typically, a lot of times you see products, the churn is pretty high in the first few days, few weeks, and then it's very stable after that. So you can see here, day 7, we see a very high churn, and after that it's slightly moderate. So you can take this and again use this as a benchmark. You can compare it against competitors. And you can also try to see if there is any deviation in that. Let's say suddenly on day 35 you see a high churn, you can immediately trigger alerts saying that, okay, there's something wrong, because usually day 35 we don't see this kind of a churn. And once you have something like this is very simple analytics that one could perform on churn, but this is super powerful because again, as you know, churn is very important, directly contributes to the revenue. So on day 7, when you see like this high churn, on day 6 maybe you can actually send push notifications. You can do so much to try to keep the user, retain the user. You can understand what features they like, what features they care about. You can actually re-emphasize the value of the product. There's so many things you can do on day 6 to actually ensure that day 7 they're not like moving away from the platform. Few other interesting things we've done. The first one is like a navigation path. I think there's a lot of like conversation here and like now about like the whole graph database and things like that. So this is in similar lines. We've done like a network analysis. So this chart is like a very rough prototype, but what we were able to do is we could map the entire path taken by users in the application. So you can actually see, okay, how is like someone moving from like the point of entry, which is like, let's say an app launch, to what features are they going to, and after using a particular feature, where are they going next, and so on. So you can do this like entire network analysis, and this can be very powerful because one, you can identify like dead ends. For example, you can see there are some gaps in navigation always, especially when you have like a lot of features. You can understand where users are getting stuck, where they are like getting stuck. Maybe they don't know where to navigate, they leave the app. So you can do that kind of analysis. You can also do you can also try to understand like which features sort of like become the pivot point in navigation, where every other navigation leads to that particular feature, let's say. Or you can see like which features people tend to like move in between two features. So a lot of those things you can do. You can also do like more advanced, like sophisticated analysis. Like you can run like correlation coefficients, and you can also do like, for example, average distance between like a node that shows like how easy is it to like cover the entire application, and so that will define by like the average distance. So if it's like few features, you don't have to worry about this, but especially for like large complicated applications where a lot of features are there, this kind of analysis could be pretty interesting and useful. And once you have this analysis, you can actually go back to like your customer experience team. You can tell them like, hey, listen, like why are people dropping off at this particular point? Here you can actually see the thickness indicates like how frequent the path is being taken. So you can actually see like where the drop-off rates are, talk to your customer experience or user experience or the design team to fix some of those gaps. Another interesting one which I wanted to deep dive is like as simple thing like in-app rating. You might have seen like if you're using like a banking app or any other app for that matter, food delivery also, you get like a star rating, right? Like it asks you, do you like the app? You don't like the app. Sometimes it's after taking a call, they ask you like how was the quality of your call. So you might have been familiar, and there are also app store ratings like at Apple App Store or Google Play Store. But I just wanted to highlight this in-app ratings is like super powerful and interesting. So I wanted to do like a slightly more deep dive into this. So like if you see on the left side, these are like typical like Play Store ratings, right? Like you can just try to download an application and then it'll ask you for like a prompt for like rating. Versus inside the app, sometimes you get a rating. I just wanted to ask, how many of you guys have actually gone to ever an app store and like gave a rating or a review? Were you happy or were you unhappy mostly? Mostly unhappy? Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. I think there are like so many problems to App Store ratings. One, there's absolutely no context to the user. You don't know when the user came into the app. You don't know what plan type they're using, if let's say there are several plan types. You don't know, for example, like are they really using a feature or not? Like how engaged are they? Are they even opening the app or not? So there's absolutely no context for like a product manager or data analyst from the App Store. Second is adverse selection. As few folks pointed out here, they probably went on the App Store and vented out and gave like a typically like very negative rating, and so there's an adverse selection problem. So that's why app store ratings are like not reliable. Either people are extremely happy and maybe incentivized to go and then they give a rating, or there's also like people who are unhappy who are more likely to go and like give an app store rating. And there's also like constantly changing ratings, because I've seen like Apple and Google, they're trying to always remove some spam, irrelevant ratings. I've seen this in cases where they're trying to talk about a different app and then they gave a rating in some other app. So those kind of things also happen. There are also like bots, etc. So Google is like, or Apple is like trying to go back in time and like remove some of those ratings. So there's no constant like source of truth and like reliable like sentiment you can draw from these. So these are like some of the limitations of App Store. So if I am a product manager for like a consumer app, I would not want to rely on like App Store ratings. I mean, there could still be some good insights you can draw, but like it's not as powerful, I would say. So that's why I think in-app ratings, which is what I define as anytime you give a rating inside the app, you're not going to like these app stores, but inside the app you're giving. So now you are actually collecting all this information, so you can do a lot more with this data. So I feel I'm trying to make an argument that you should focus, if you're looking at consumer app, or even for example like even a B2B as well, focus on like inside the app, like what kind of like ratings you're collecting. So once you've collected at an app level, you can actually obviously just draw these like kind of insights as to monthly what is the trend like in terms of rating, how many people have rated, how many people have given like 1 star, 5 star, and so on. So you can do like all these like very basic analysis. You can, very interestingly, you can do more sophisticated triggers as well. Like you can define when you want to show the user this in-app rating option, right? It can be after performing, let's say, onboarding. First time they onboarded, you can show them a rating. That will give you an indication of how good the onboarding experience was. You can actually do it at a feature level. Every time they use a feature, not every time, but you can try to understand for each feature what is the sentiment score, and then also at an overall app level as well. You can also set these triggers based on your churn rate. Let's say I've identified that day 7 is where people are more likely to churn. Maybe I will try to collect the information on day 5 and day 6. Are people happy or not? And people who are, let's say, unhappy, and someone gave a 1-star rating on day 5 or day 6, I know that this person is unhappy and very likely to leave on day 7. So you can actually do a lot of campaigns. You can send push notifications to retain them. So these are some of the things you can do. And so you have like more control in terms of understanding the user. Oftentimes I feel that's the biggest challenge, like, especially a large company or a lot of customers, you don't really know what the user cares about, and hence like in-app rating can be very powerful to understand at an app level, at a feature level, at an onboarding level, and so on. This is another example again where you can compare like in-app rating at a plan level as well. Let's say there are like, you have like a freemium tier, or you have like plan 1 and like higher tier plan. So you can actually compare it against plans as well and see like which plan has like higher satisfaction. Sometimes there is it's hard to understand like customer satisfaction, because sometimes a user might be very engaged, they might use the product, and they might actually be paying, but they're not happy with the product. So I think it's really critical to get these things cleared out. Like, are people also, our users are also happy actually? So that's why you should like look at like different ways to like compare different types of user segments to really understand which is that user segment who's happy, which is the user segment that is unhappy. And once you're able to nail this down, I think you can do a lot more analytics, you can do a lot more like product features and actually increase the revenue, which I'll be talking about in a bit. So some of the things that you can do is like plan level. You can also use like demography, like let's say one geography versus another, age group, or date of activation or month of activation, what channel they came through. sometimes you'll be surprised, certain channels actually lead to unhappy customers because maybe the way it was promoted in a specific channel, people were not like happy with it, or people were set like wrong expectations. So I think these kind of like analysis will help you really define, okay, which channel people are happy and which channel people are not. And lastly, you can also see at a feature level as well, which we already discussed, certain features people are happy, certain features not. You can also compare it across app version or platform, like let's say Google versus Android versus desktop versus web portal, or you can also do like within Android if there are multiple versions, sometimes you can even compare against those. So ultimately the point of all this is to really do all of these kind of like trial and error to understand who is the happy user, who is the unhappy user, and once you know that, I think you can do a lot more. This is another example. You can actually, apart from ratings, get like reviews as well inside the app, or sometimes App Store also you can do this analysis. You can just get like a word cloud and kind of like see like what users are talking about mostly. This is something I picked up from the internet, so it's not a actual word cloud, but I couldn't share that one. But this is something that you can do as well. This is very interesting, where I was able to actually see churn versus like rating. Sometimes what happens is, this is again counterintuitive in a few cases, but let me go through an example and that might be more clear. So the first chart here is just showing that people who have given like 1-star rating, like how many people have like left the app after giving a specific rating. So in this case, you can see 25 people gave a 1-star rating and soon after that they left. Versus people who gave a 5-star rating, like only 6 of them left. This is churn rate. So people who gave like 1-star rating, you have like 36% churn, versus 5-star rating, you have like 11% churn. So some insights here I was able to draw, like people who, out of people who deactivated, 71% overall like gave a 1-star rating versus 17% gave like 5-star rating. So it's pretty interesting. Again, this seems like very obvious, okay, yeah, so what? But if you actually see, this is a leading indicator. So the user is almost telling you before they leave the platform, before they deactivate, that they are actually unhappy. Imagine what you can do with this. Like most of the times it's after the fact that people leave and then you try to like talk to them or you understand what went wrong. But this is a very good leading indicator that people are literally telling you, hey, if you don't fix this, if you don't make me happy, I'm going to leave tomorrow. So this can be like very powerful if you actually deploy it in either B2C, either B2B, wherever it is. But like these leading indicators are super helpful. Next one, like 36% churn rate. Again, like I don't want to go into the same thing in a like worded in a different way, but you get the idea. The churn rate, you can actually predict, you can do predictive models as well to actually understand who are the people who are going to leave your platform. And so one of the interesting things I saw was 60% users who churned were actually using one specific version of the app. So potentially this app was like, version was very buggy, maybe there were few issues, etc. But we saw that comparing different versions, we saw that, okay, one version of a particular app, like we saw like high churn. But remember, to think of it as a leading indicator, you can run predictive algorithms once you get this in-app rating, and you can try to prevent them from leaving. And we can talk about that a little bit. So these things I already covered, but I just wanted to summarize. You can actually, if you have a very sophisticated app, like too many features, too much complicated navigation, do something like a network analysis. It's very straightforward. You collect all the client-side metrics. You sort of have to still like change the data labeling, change the way it is structured, but you can use like open source tools like Gephi to really see like how people are navigating within the app, and that might actually give you like very interesting insights. And you can actually, to keep it simple, you can even start with like 3-4 features, or let's say only few sessions, like 10 seconds or 20 seconds into the session, you can capture that instead of capturing the entire session. So, but you can do a lot of analysis like that. Next, as I said, do this analysis of like 1-star versus 5-star in your app, and you can actually see if people who have given 5-star rating, are they really loyal users? Are they more likely to stick around? Are they more likely to pay for a higher tier or more potentially as well? And also you can do a measure against the churn rating, where 1-star people who've given 1-star are more likely to churn or not. So those are some of the things that you can do. Now, once I was able to do all this analysis, like one is from a data analysis point of view to understand the user. But once you understood all of this, you can actually then do improvements in the product. You can personalize the experience. So these are like sort of like the outcome. Like once you understand the user, it's not really benefiting. Okay, so what? Now you want to actually take those insights and change your product, like personalize your product, and then you can actually see like significant improvement in like engagement or like revenue. So I'm just going to talk about like what are some of the things that we've been exploring in the product that I manage. So one thing is like home screen is where like a lot of times people spend most time on. So we didn't want to like focus on like personalizing other things, but just like on the home screen itself, that's where people come, that's where people tend to leave as well. Most time is spent here. So I'm just thinking, okay, how do I now personalize this home screen for all the users out there? And here I'm again looking at all the insights that I was able to draw so far and talk about those. First thing is, you have identified by this point who is the happy user, who is the unhappy user, right? So you know for each of these users who is like, let's say, given a 1-star versus 5-star. Now for the happy users, you can actually personalize your home screen by, let's say, promoting certain products. You can cross-sell certain products. You can ask them to upgrade. So you can do so many things because you know that this person is loyal to you. You know that this person is happy with your product. So obviously you want to increase your ARPU, average revenue per user, and this is the best place to start with. The people who have given 5-star rating are happy with your product, and so you can actually push them more products, push them for an upgrade, increase your revenue per user. The next one is, let's say you have done like feature rating. So you know there are 10 features, you know which features everyone likes, which features a particular user likes. So you can customize this entire experience by actually showing features at the top that the users really care about. The users are pretty much engaged. The users are happy with that feature. So you can do these algorithms where you can rank features on the home screen and put the features on the top which are valuable. And lastly, for unhappy users, right? Like you know that these people are likely to leave, and you already got that leading indicator. You can actually provide them maybe discounts, for example. You can try to figure out something is happening with their navigation. Are they facing any bugs or other kind of errors, etc., which is actually making them unhappy? But once you know this, you can actually personalize the home screen by maybe ensuring that you send marketing message that, hey, what is the value of the product again, and or you can also offer them like a 20% discount on next month's subscription, let's say. So you can do all of these things by personalizing, but very key that it's not just drawing insights, but actually how do you use that to really personalize the experience for each and every user, not at like a larger app level. You can still do that, but for every person you can think about who's unhappy or happy, how do you change the experience for that? All right, so hopefully this was helpful. Thank you. Any questions, let me know.
Okay. Oh. Thank you, Harish. And perfect. That allows for at least 15 minutes for questions. So any questions for Harish? There you go.
Yeah, actually, I mean, there are a lot of tools to capture client-side metrics. So you must have heard of like Amplitude, Flurry is one, there's Localytics. There are quite a few applications out there that can capture what every user is clicking on, what is the session length, how much time are they spending on the app. So you can use some of these like third-party tools and get this metrics. Now, once you have like per event data captured, let's say a user comes on the platform, first clicks on feature 1, then goes to feature 2, then goes to feature 3. You have all this raw data. Then you can use a tool like Gephi or a few other tools that provide this network diagram, and then you can use that to like sort of like visualize, or you can even write like queries to instead of visualizing, like draw insights directly as well. But yeah, there are these tools. As I said, one Gephi is something I'm familiar with for network analysis, which is largely used. I actually another interesting example was I used network analysis Gephi for understanding like basketball teams. You can see like how basketball players are like passing to each other. So I looked at like Golden State Warriors and saw like who's getting most passes, who's actually getting passes and then immediately shooting and missing or actually scoring. So anyways, Gephi is a good example for you to try in network analysis. But if you want to capture client-side metrics, it's Localytics, Flurry, Amplitude, and few others.
And then you also talked about monitoring the KPI to see if there's any spike
Yeah.
in the trend. Do you use tools as well?
Yeah, I think, again, there are a lot of tools which you can actually set alerts, which is very simple. You can set like deviations within the tool, saying that if there's a 20% deviation from average value, or you can set that value, you can get an alert. So there are like a lot of these dashboarding tools like ThoughtSpot or Click or few others. I think they allow you to do this anomaly detection as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm wondering about at the point where the customer, they're not happy, then can't probably do something. The sequence matter here. Do you have any idea how much percentage where they leave a feedback and then deactivate, or they deactivate and then they do their review also?
So because this is at an app store level, like if you go on Apple App Store or Google Play Store, a lot of times maybe people are unhappy, they deactivate, and then whenever they have time, they go on there and leave a review. But if it is in-app, essentially you can set the trigger that, let's say if a user has spent a week within the app, that's when you trigger this. So technically, they are still using the app. So while they are using the app, you're asking for a rating, saying that are you happy or not. So they're not like have deactivated at this point. But the important thing is to really understand what is the high risk period for an application. Is it like first 1 week, 10 days, 1 month? It varies from app to app. But very critical to understand for your particular app, what is that high risk phase. After that, the churn is very stable, so you don't have to worry about them. So based on that, you can set these triggers and say collect the information before itself. All right. Thanks everyone.